Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. I think today let's go two different directions. Let's go to Berlin and let's go to Picton, Ontario, where we'll talk to a farmer. I'm going to talk to the farmer first because he's not only a farmer, but he's also a retired economics professor at York University and on the governance whatever of the internet. So he travels around straightening out our lives and making sure that we have good connectivity and all of those things that advisors do. Hello, Sam Lanfranco. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Meta, for that introduction.
It's as close to being an accurate one as I'm capable of. But now let's go to Berlin, where my friend Rainer Brown is right now waiting to tell us all about what's going on in German politics, especially since I have already broached the question of whether or not he thinks that Canada should release all those turbines to Russia so that Germany will get its fuel for the winter. But when he's not worrying about such matters, he is the chief executive of the International Peace Bureau. So hello, Rainer Brown. How are you?
Hello. Great to hear and see you again.
How's everything in Picton?
Well, things are pretty good here. In a sentence, the major problem with the Prince Edward County is that it's becoming a destination for the rich.
Oh, okay.
And all the things that can go wrong when you become a destination for the rich are going wrong here. I won't elaborate on that because that's a different topic.
Well, I want to hear about the internet and what you're going to do to make it all work. We just had an outage, here in Canada. I suppose this may be part of your chore is to fix our policies vis-a-vis whether or not to have a private internet or continue this arrangement where everybody's trying to make a buck from us. But we had an outage for, I think it was over 24 hours, all across Canada for one company, the major company, Rogers. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't even get my email. Tell me what you think about what's going on the internet.
Well, first I'll talk about the interruption. One of the major carriers was doing a maintenance upgrade, and as a result of the maintenance upgrade, they crashed virtually all of their systems. So commerce, emergency phone calls, a lot of places that had their data on the cloud, transactions in stores, all of that ground to a halt. And it raised two questions, to be very quick on that. One is that some countries, the government has negotiated an agreement with the carriers that they will backstop each other. And if one is having trouble, they can then switch over and ride onto the bandwidth of the other while they sort it out. That's one. The second is that Canada does not have very much competition between carriers, and as a result, we think we pay higher prices, and we think that the companies are being less innovative than they would be if they were under competitive pressure. The third is that the government doesn't really know what its policies should be. The internet came so fast. The notion of a public internet versus a private internet is much more complicated than the notion of a public utility system or a private utility system. And what we need are the dialogues around those things with multiple stakeholders involved in the dialogue, not just so that we get the opinions of the various stakeholders, but so that the various stakeholders can learn, so that they begin to understand the complexity of the issues and they begin to understand each other's positions. We haven't had much of that. We're in an early era of the internet where it's a great platform for people to express opinions, and sometimes they express kind of extreme opinions because they're going to get followers and they can even make money from that. So we have the social behavior on the internet, and usually any system of governance also assumes that there's a kind of social contract in which people in their own individual behavior behave responsibly. We don't have that in the internet at the moment. So I'm the head of a task force called the Internet Integrity Task Force. And so basically we're trying to bring integrity to policy processes, behavior on the internet.
I've only seen two articles that touch on this more radical proposal. One is a guy named Ben Tarnoff, who's writing a book, or maybe it's out by now, in which his argument is that the internet should be a public utility. And I'm not quite sure, how that would work. But he's hoping that libraries, you could set up your own servers and things and the public libraries should make things available and so on. And just today, I think the Globe and Mail had an article by somebody making, in a much more abbreviated form, the same kind of argument that the problem with the internet is that it is a business and it shouldn't be. And I don't know whether you have an opinion about that. And I'd also wonder whether Reiner has an opinion about that.
Yes, it is a business, and it's a complicated one because unlike electricity, hydro, a significant portion of the investment in the internet is not just the wires or the towers getting the signal to wherever a user is, but it's the whole back end, which we now roughly talk about as the cloud, where all the data is kept. These gigantic installations around the world that have thousands and thousands of computers whose main job is just to hold the data and send it on demand and store it when it comes in. So exactly what you mean by a public utility approach to the internet is not easy. It's complicated because you basically all of think of hydropower. At the moment, it would be like hydropower with all the dams and all the water being owned privately. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how the internet is now. All the dams and all the water is being owned privately. Mm-hmm. And we pay.
I don't know how anybody makes any money from it. These guys who own the cloud, if you will. I mean, I guess you're talking about people who have great big computers and big storage systems. And are we paying them to just hold our stuff for us, or what?
Yeah, it's being paid in various ways. Companies will be paying, for server space, for server traffic, and for storage. Private individuals, and this is one of the big issues, private individuals are basically, I call it indentured labor. We get to use the internet for free, but we're supplying information that goes into the artificial intelligence algorithms from simple to very sophisticated. And we're basically being profiled so that if we're looking at a news feed, there's product placement and ads to sell us stuff. And so they're making their money, Amazon and Google and so forth, from what they charge for the advertisements that accompany the things we're looking for. And then they track us mercilessly. For example, when you go somewhere and they want to prove you're a human and you have to identify the pictures before they'll let you in, if you notice, all those pictures have to do with traffic. They don't show you birds or cats.
That's interesting.
And the reason is that they're using...
I always flunk. I always flunk that test because
they're using it to improve their automobile artificial intelligence.
Honestly, now I'm even more angry about it because I really resent having to do it. And the point is that I think I am smart enough to pass usual IQ tests, but I'm not smart enough to pass that thing because I can never tell whether that's a traffic signal or a ship. But you're right. They're all transportation. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Reiner Brown, what the hell is going on? What do you think about?
I think you were speaking about the biggest business in the world next to the military-industrial complex.
Yeah,
this is the whole internet complex, which include Google, Amazon, Facebook, and an end. That is about what we are speaking. It is on one side an absolutely needed instrument because we cannot live without it any longer. We are used to this, to use it day to day. But on the other side, it's a huge control instrument, which is controlling what we are doing, what we should do, what we should not do. It is controlling when we are entering something, when we are leaving something. It's controlling when we are traveling, and an end. So I think, for me, the first point is what is private and what should be public. And I think the basic instrument, the basic needs for internet should be public because it's something like a common good. that everyone should use. And, we have, in many countries, we have a big diversity of these use. When you are in some landscape areas, it is very difficult to have internet connection. It's very slow because the companies could not earn money. And in the big cities, it is quick. You can have it day and night. So, but what is with the school kids in these areas where not so many people are living? What is with the farmers? Sometimes they have problems with their factories and with their tractors because, they are also using internet for them today. And this is slow and doesn't work. So it is also, this internet for me creates also a two-class world community. What is with the South? When you ever was in Africa, how difficult it is to get to internet, how difficult it is to have a Zoom call with Nigeria or with Ghana. Internet is slow, it doesn't work all the times, it interrupts. So we have also a two-class community by internet with these high developed countries which have more or less brilliant internet and big parts of the world. So for me, we are living with it, we are needing it, we cannot live without it, but how to democratize it, how to have it under control and not only under private control, that is for me a huge question. That has to do with Amazon, with Google, with Facebook, with all these tremendously big and rich companies.
Yeah. Okay. But look, from my point of view and from the point of view of the peace person, in terms of looking for dangers ahead, that lie ahead, I think the Internet of Things is the scarier thing. We are not just dependent on the computer here that I'm sitting in front of, but we're dependent on things like going on in my kitchen or things that may, somebody eventually is going to be able to come along and turn on all of this ovens and stoves in Ontario, and just by flicking a switch, or unlock the front doors of everybody in Ontario, and so on. And that's the kind of thing that, I don't really have a sense of worrying about my privacy. I'm pretty open anyway. I believe in transparency. So if they want to track me and find out what kind of taste I have in books or music, that's okay with me. But what I don't like is becoming so vulnerable to something that it could be, somebody deliberately trying to mess me up or my country up because it's an alien enemy, or it could just be a big mistake. Somebody doing what happened this last weekend with the internet and throughout Canada, and that scares me because we're so vulnerable now.
Well, there are two parts to that. In terms of vulnerability, one is the massive and well-organized criminal industry of breaking in and stealing things on the internet, which is very, very organized. If I had a target group that I wanted to molest with malicious software or something, I can go into the dark web and hire a company who will do it for me. I don't even have to know how to use a telephone. I have to get to them and sign a contract with them, and they'll go do whatever mayhem I pay them to do. So cyber warfare, both on the part of criminal elements and on the part of governments, that's a major issue down the road because there are a whole bunch of
here.
things.
It's already here. Apparently, banks, we don't even know how much they pay to have people try to keep the thieves from pilfering, large sums of money from banks. They don't want it to be known.
No, and public libraries are frequently having to pay off people who are holding them hostage, and very seldom do they announce publicly that the local library has had to pay $20,000 or $30,000 to some crook. So that's one level. But the other level that I want to talk about for a second is the notion of governance. The notion of governance of the internet ecosystem. We've lost, maybe we never had it, but I thought that kind of at least coming out of World War II and the UN and the global organizations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we had some notion of a governance that applied not just to what does the government do, but how does governance operate within corporations? What's the integrity that they abide by? How does governance work within a community? In some communities, it works very well, and there's a lot of community discussion and so forth. But governance, and a word that has virtually disappeared from our vocabulary, especially in education, civics. There's almost no education around civics anymore. And so people will have opinions about the government depending on their self-interest. I don't like the gas prices. I'm unhappy about masks and so forth. But if you ask them, well, what's their idea of governance? What should it be? They haven't got a clue. They'll have some opinion that they're supporting Trump or they're supporting whomever. But it's as though we've got a huge vacuum out there where we're wanting people to support dialogue around good policies, and there's no dialogue, and the policies are coming from vested interest groups that have immense private power. Look at what Uber did in England. They just basically changed the dialogue around Uber in England by paying off a lot of people, and including academics who wrote favorable reports for them. So it's a case at the moment that money talks. Basically,
well,
money
that's
talks.
true. But I've just written a 100-page article about called Toward a Newer New World Order, because we've had new world orders all over the place. But I think right now there is a moment when people are thinking beyond the current limitations and looking to create institutional structures. I did include a big section on cyber risks, but I don't know enough to really focus on that. And I wouldn't anyway, because I think it's more trying to make the UN into something that really is governance and not just advice and chit chat. How much, Reiner, are peace activists now looking beyond things like how to get the NPT to survive another go around, or is there any way of stopping the use of tactical nuclear weapons in this war, et cetera? That kind of level of peace work, and talking about a bigger, longer term plan for setting up institutions that actually will be able to govern with international law and the enforcement of international law. What's going on in terms of peace work and governance?
Oh, this is one question for a seminar of, I don't know, half a year.
Yeah.
But maybe we start with some points of it. First of all, I think we need definitely a discussion about a new security structure. And you know that International Peace Bureau, together with the International Trade Union Confederation and the Olaf Palme Center, was presenting in April the new Olaf Palme report number 2, Our Common Security. And this report tries to bring together the ideas of a new security order basic on the ideas of common security, basis on the ideas of Olaf Palme, but try to develop these ideas from 40 years to the time now, which means the ideas are to globalize the ideas of common security on one side and also to regionalize the ideas of common security. Common security means, to say it very easy, that your security or my security is only secure or safe when the security of the other side is also safe. Security is double pack. Either both sides are secure or none side are secure. This means today that we have to discuss these common security strategy, not only for Europe, what Olaf Palme report number 1 was do, but for the different parts of the world. Look to Asia, look to the Korean Peninsula, South China Sea, and many other parts of the world. Look to Africa, Sahel zone, and other regions. And we developed guidelines in the report how we can develop a common security system for the different parts of the world. On the other side, we need a global answer. This means common security today means to take care of climate change, hunger, and poverty. Because all these problems can only be solved on the basis of common security, which means on the basis of cooperation and dialogue, common negotiation, common understanding of the different parts of the world. So these are some ideas which we were developing, and now we are promoting them. We are in the discussion with the United Nations, with the OSCE and other structures, but also with different governments, to start a discussion about a new common security system. We need this for Europe. The old common security system, the old peace architecture is broken, latest with the war, but in reality, it was broken before. So what does this mean for a new architecture for Europe? And our idea is to develop such a new peace architecture for Europe till to 2025, when we have the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki conference, and try to develop first steps. First steps definitely now are steps in the direction of trust building, cooperation, dialogue, open discussions, exchanges, scientific and people's diplomacy. What we definitely need is, again, contact between the people of the different countries, above all the peoples which are called enemies to each other. Everyone is talking about heavy weapons, about militarization of the conflict, of new arms, and. Where is the offensive for negotiations, for dialogue, and for cooperation?
It's not going to happen, because until there's some kind of stalemate or something that they realize they may as well talk. Right now, neither side's going to talk.
You know, remember, you are old enough like me to remember the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ends with negotiations. Even the negotiations take part when there was the most brutal bombing of North Vietnam. There was no stop of the negotiations between the US and North Vietnam at that time. So when there is a political will, you can start negotiations.
We have the problem. There isn't right now.
The difficult problem is how we can arrange this political will and who can bring the different parts together. For this, we need moderation and mediation. And when I'm looking who could be elements of such a moderation process, I'm coming to several players. Not all of them I love. One definitely is the Pope. I think he will play a key role with everything he was saying to this country. Secondly is definitely the General Secretary of the United Nations. Third is, from my understanding, the Italian government. The Italian government comes out with a peace plan, with a plan for negotiations. This is a 4-topic plan, which I think is quite great. They discussed it with both sides with Ukraine and with the Russian government, and both sides have not said no.
Hey, I haven't even heard of it. When did it happen?
This is the peace plan of the Italian government is quite good. It is neutrality, negotiation, solving the regional conflict, new constitution, election campaign, and develop something like, they call it Minsk III. You can also give another name for that. So that are elements for this plan. So then there are these discussions in Turkey, and maybe Erdogan, whom I definitely not love, is one who can bring the two sides together. He's now helping by all the discussion about the grain. And, we have discussions this weekend again in Istanbul between the three parts, United Nations, Russia, and Ukraine, about how we can transport grain from Russia and Ukraine over the Black Sea through the Dardanelles to the world. So these are steps. What we are missing is diplomatic.
My problem is you're referring to about 4 or 5 things that I haven't even heard yet. That's my problem. I don't get the news maybe that I should be getting, because we don't hear it. Now that's really interesting. Now what I'm curious about is who, if you have the future security structure in mind for the whole region, would it involve going back to the plan that we had in the end of the Cold War, that the OSCE should sort of we'd get rid of NATO and we'd all switch over to the OSCE?
Frankly speaking, rid of NATO is definitely a long-term goal. But it's definitely a long-term goal.
Yeah.
But the role maybe we need a process where the role of the NATO goes down step by step, and the role of the ESCE and parallel institutions. I think we need new institutions. Above all, on the ecological field, what does this war mean? This war, from my understanding, in reality means the end of the Paris Treaty, the Climate Treaty of Paris. But because when we are continue doing what we are doing now, reproduce our coal mines, reproduce our brown coal mines, enlarging all the weapon productions, using more resources, that is the end of Paris too. Because in this atmosphere of confrontation, who should pay for this climate fund? Do you think that Russia will pay for it? The US will pay for it? Germany? They are paying for the military budgets. So that means reality also the end of this. And the countries in the South will follow. What should the countries in Africa do? They need more land for agriculture, so they will burn the woods. The same in other parts of the world. And at the end, I will not speak any longer 1.2 degrees. This is over. We will have 1.2 degrees latest in 2025. But we are speaking about a general change in the last second. And now we are absolutely going the wrong way. And I'm happy that the Pope always underlined this in his speeches. So, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a church people, but I think I accept his important awareness-raising role. So we need new structures for an ecological process in Europe. At the end, frankly speaking, also gas is not the alternative. But the alternative to overcome gas means cooperation with Russia. We need the wind in Siberia, and we need the sun in the south of Russia for renewable energy. So, and this again needs the Western technology and the wind and the sun in the south to overcome these extractivism economy of Russia. This is either not sustainable, not future-oriented, and it is a opposite of solving the climate change problem. So these are the thoughts we need. And my main critics to what's happened now is that no one, and this is above all a deep, strong critics to the Greens, is discussing about these ways, these alternatives. And that is what I think what is needed. And this is, for me, a part of our common security discussion. IPB is, from these perspectives, more than weak. And I'm happy that we have the International Trade Unions Confederation and the Olaf Palme Center with us in the boat. But this is also absolutely not enough to start a general discussion in the world about these alternatives.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. That's a great overview. And I'm sure that Sam...
Listening to what he is saying, I agree with him. The question, and it involves internet governance as well, once we can describe what there should look like, or what some of the properties of there should have, that better world, the big issue is always, how do we get there from here? And one of the things that I keep harping away at is that, and there's an interesting sidebar to this, is that you need the kind of multi-stakeholder conversations going on very, very broadly across constituencies, so that people begin to understand each other, they begin to have some trust in each other. And if you can do that across nation states, then you can move in these complicated areas into a kind of multilateral governance, multilateral treaties agreeing on how you're going to govern space, the ocean, the internet, peace, and so forth. But it's that first step, getting that dialogue going so that people become knowledgeable enough that they're aware, and they're aware enough that they understand that they need to get engaged, even at the local level.
I'm more pessimistic than that, because when you talk about, well, everything depends on getting some kind of dialogue and consensus and agreement. I think the problem is that we need real international law. We need a system for developing what has to be recognized as authentic law, international law, and we need means of enforcing it. And I just mentioned the OSCE, which I used to think would be a far better system for governance than certainly than the NATO. But I'm now, very disappointed, because even OSCE cannot even take a position on this war, because they have a rule based on consensus. If they take a critical position, of course they couldn't enforce it. I mean, the ICJ can't enforce it. The UN can't enforce anything. There's no binding legislation. But if they even say something that is offensive to the Russians may not pay their dues and may not allow a budget to be approved, and may block consensus on anything, including even the replacement or the naming of a new head CEO, or whatever it's called, as the Secretary General of the OSCE. Her term is going to expire, and they can't get a new one because maybe Russia won't even allow a consensus to go forward. They would just kill the organization. So we've got to have something stronger than just consensus or negotiation and hoping that everybody agrees, because they don't agree.
But Meta, we had this war was such a deep backslash that I know many, and I will also include me, who was in the beginning of the war deeply frustrated that such event in Central of Europe could happen again. I could not imagine before it starts. But then we were with friends and colleagues discussing, and my opinion now is we cannot allow each other to give up, even when it is very difficult and critical. Even when we don't know if we will be successful, even when it is very difficult to reach quick goals and results. Mm-hmm. The world is in such a situation that either we are finding ways of this dramatic ecological and peace crisis, or the world really comes to an end. Mm-hmm. You can say, it doesn't care for us. We have to live some years. For us, it is horrible like it is, but it is not really a bad situation. But the next generation, our children and grandchildren, they are living in a world where it is partly impossible to live, even when not a nuclear weapons attack will happen. So, and when I put this in my mind, we have to try the best what we can. We have to again and again think which are ways who could lead out of these crises, knowing that we can fail again. And when I have this in mind, I have 2 or 3 points which I really love to do. First is, I'm absolutely next to Sam, is how we can develop again the peoples to peoples contact. You remember the END campaign in the 80s.
Absolutely.
For the block situation, we were trying to develop these contacts. And, one great man who was staying for this, Bruce Kent, died last week or 10 days ago. So what can we do? And IPB is up to now was arranging 4 or 5 Zoom calls with peace activists of Ukraine and Russia together. They were discussing about peace, and they love each other. They are not enemies. We are in strong contact with the feminist peace movement in Russia, which is the strongest opposition to the war in the country. So we are supporting these people. We are trying to convince that every contact between Russia and Germany, from peoples to peoples contracts, is absolutely needed and must be developed. And that is steps to create another atmosphere and to stop that they are developed us as enemies, which is when you are looking to the German mass medias, you can't be crazy. Yeah? You can believe that you are back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that are some steps which we as IPB can do. And this means also to try to work together with the small peace groups in Russia, the small peace groups in Ukraine.
I have a lot of Russian friends, and I used to have a lot of contacts with them because I used to go to Russia every year for a long time. And, but you know, I have less contact now than before the war because some people absolutely are afraid to have any contact or don't want to, or in fact, hate me. I mean, they really hate me. Because I'm part of the Western imperialists, or God knows what they think I am, but they don't want conversations. So I have less contact than ever. And now it's to the extent that I don't even know whether or not it's something that say there are people that I haven't been in touch with because I haven't reached out to them. I could send out, for example, Facebook. I have probably about 30 friends who are Russian. And I could send out a message to them, but I'm afraid to because some of them would be so angry they don't want to hear from me.
Yeah, but maybe you have
or they would be in trouble.
But maybe 5 which don't want to talk with you, but 10 wants to talk with you. And these 10 are happy to have the contact because they feel also isolated. I will tell you a small story. I have a really great good friend who is professor at the Lomonosov University. She calls me and said, Rainer, can you have a talk with my students? My students were going out in front of the Lomonosov University in the beginning of the war with posters and saying no to war. And they feel themselves totally isolated. Mm-hmm. They cannot talk at home with their parents because their parents are in favor of the war. So then I had with these 20 students a wonderful 2-hour Zoom call. I told them it is great what you are doing. And there are people all around the world which are protesting against this war. And please be careful what you are doing, but never give up your mind. And I was explaining them when I was young, I was also had all these controversies with my parents, asking them, what have you done between 33 and 45? And got no answer. And at the end, they understood that they have to be sitting and working together, that they have to create an own community of discussion and solidarity, that they are not alone. And this was great for them. And till today, I'm in contact with them. This is only a small example. I can tell you equal stories from our contact to the feminist movement. They are so happy to have these contacts. Yes, there are people which are shouting you. Maybe they are calling you a Western spy. Okay, we have to live with this. But, I'm at home also called I'm a Putin friend. Yeah, I have nothing to do with Putin. But, when you are against the war, you're a Putin friend. What is this for an argument? Yeah, I don't care about that. So long we have power enough and so long we have friends enough in our community, in our surrounding, so long we have organizations like IPB and others, Women's League for Peace and Freedom and others, and can do this work. We should definitely do this. This is, for me, the most important peace work which we can do today. Mm-hmm. And this is maybe not successful tomorrow, but, I think it will open the door again, will create an atmosphere for changing in the societies and internationally. And, my first political actions when I was a schoolboy was for Willy Brandt. And when I was going on the streets and making my first election campaign for Willy Brandt. And, Willy Brandt work, he was 5 times running to become a chancellor before he becomes a chancellor. 4 times he lost because the time was not right. Mm-hmm. And after the 3rd lost, he had a long discussion with friends. You can read this in his biography to say, I will give up. I have tried it 3 times. Now it's enough. And we can be happy that he have not given up. that he was running again
Mm.
and had done it. So I think when we have personally the power and the capacity and feel healthy and can do it, I think we have to do what we can do to redevelop a process of detente, of cooperation and dialogue. That is absolutely not easy in these times, but I cannot see an alternative. The alternative is that we are running without doing anything in the nuclear war, because these confrontation will end in a nuclear war. That is obviously. The nuclear war can be in Europe, but it also can be in China. Both is possible. From my understanding, even China is the most difficult situation is for me, internationally around Taiwan, because this is so dangerous.
Well, you know what? I think that the most, the thing that is wonderful is we actually have the technological capacity to have those conversations. It's my fear that that the people I know don't want to participate or would be angry with me that inhibits it. But we have Zoom and it works. And as far as I know, I mean, Sam, how much has this war interfered with the overall functioning of contacts between Russians and either Ukrainians or just the rest of the world, like you and me and Reiner? How much has that changed the amount of contact, and is there anything we can do to boost it?
Well, in the short run, yes, it has changed the contact at two levels. The first is fear. You have to be careful, sort of who you're talking to and with, especially in Russia, because somebody can say that's unacceptable. And the other is the state has reduced some of the communications channels. This is one of the things that, contrary to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, governments around the world, every government practically, one way or the other, curbs those rights with respect to its citizens when the government feels that it's expedient for the government to do so. Now, I want to come back to something that Ryan was talking about.
Can I, before you,
one of the ways that I think about this,
say one sentence to the internet possibilities?
Yeah.
Try it. We had contact to Ukraine, to Kiev in the most worst situation when you can hear the bombing. It works.
Oh yeah, no, it works. It works. No, I'm not saying, I'm a resigned optimist. I see absolutely no gains in being a pessimist on any front.
We still had up to now never a problem to have internet contact with a different part of Russia, not only to Moscow and St. Petersburg, but also to Krasnoyarsk and Murmansk. So you're definitely right. They can control it, and you should be a little bit careful how you discuss, but it is possible. And we have no alternative. The alternative is to wait till when? Till what?
Yeah, no, we have no alternative. And right, when I said that what governments do is they close down the news channels, the broad channels. One-to-one contact, every time something like this happens, one of the organizations that I've worked with, which runs private virtual networks for individuals, their subscriptions go way up, because you can use virtual private networks to get around almost any obstacles. But those are like one-to-one and small group to small group communications. The worry is what happens with the false news that's being spread to everybody. And that's a serious problem. But there are 2 points I wanted to make here. One is I'm frequently in discussions where they say, we have to leave a better world for our children and our grandchildren. We have to sort these problems out for them. And my response is, we're not going to sort these problems out for them. We have to arm them to be able to work on the problems themselves. So an understanding of governance, an understanding of civics, an understanding of the ethics behind the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's one. The other is to remind us, I always have to remind me, that everything that we did after World War II, almost everything had been proposed after World War I, and we didn't do it, and we had 50 years or 40 years of absolute inhumanity at every level. that we did it after World War II because what we had just gone through was so bad that we could do it. What we're trying to do now is make a change based on where we don't want to go, where we do want to go. So it's a different challenge. But back to Reiner's point, you need the people talking to each other. Like I try to get people. It can get ridiculous. In the United States, the right wing of the Republican Party has been capturing school boards. The school boards in the local school communities, because they want to dictate what is or isn't taught, what books are and are not being read. The school board should be a place where the community has a dialogue, not where there's a political struggle over who controls it. And it's how we get beyond that, where everything is either monetized or turned into political. Everybody's a political adversary if they don't agree with me. And the other thing is people who just, and we've got lots of research on this. Somebody will have a position. They'll be given a ton of evidence showing that they're factually wrong, but at the end, they still have their position.
Yeah, that's really the problem. All the civics courses in the world isn't going to make irrational people more rational, because they may know everything, but it doesn't make any difference. Now, and the other part is the fear. And I could post something to my Russian friends, say 30 of my Facebook friends, and say, such and such a time, I'm going to have a Zoom conference call. And I'm pretty sure that 90% of them could actually access it if they wanted to. Half of them, or 90%, I have no idea how many, will get mad at me and say, I could go to prison for 15 years for saying it's something critical, or even using the word war instead of special military operation. So don't get me in trouble by trying to get me to talk to you. And that's the problem. I'm afraid to get somebody in trouble by saying, come and join our Zoom conference call at such and such a time. I'm afraid that they may get in real trouble, and I don't even know the answer. How much trouble will they get in? Some people seem to be willing to take the risk. I mean, I know one guy, Russian guy, who puts the Ukrainian flag all over his homepage on his, website. And some of these people are really just thumbing their nose at the government and just expecting to get incarcerated for it. But other people are scared to death that if I even contact them, they'll.
We were asking all our friends the same questions, because we really don't want to bring anyone in danger.
Right.
And they always think, we discuss it. We discuss with you that we can do, that is also allowed to do. We are careful by using some words. You will mention it. Not all of them are using the word war.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are using the word military operation. They find better description for that. Mm-hmm. But they are able to talk with us. And up to now, no one of them was accused. No one was putting in arrest or something else. So they were using our context even to strengthen their own position, to see that they are not alone, that they are part of an international or worldwide community. So it is up to now, from my understanding, possible. And I will underline this by one sentence. For me, one of the deepest disappointments of this war, next to the war, was the behavior of the international scientific community. The international scientific community, mainly the German, but quite all the Europeans, have broken all the scientific contacts to Russia. This is, for me, totally unbelievable. Mm. Max Planck, we have a Max Planck Institute in St. Petersburg. They closed it. They stopped all the scientific programs. They stopped all the exchange of students and young scientists. That is, for me, absolutely the wrong way. Right. And wherever I am, I try to convince people, try to get in contact with them. What we are now doing, and we had a first meeting, there are not so many countries where we and the Russians can easily travel. There's one country which is quite easy for both sides. This is Turkey. We had a first meeting with some of them in Antalya, 2.5 days, without any problem. They could travel, we could travel, And we meet. We met and we discussed. So when you are creative and when you really want to do it, it is still possible to find ways to do it. As I think this is what we are doing. And I'm very happy that the IPB family, not only the board, but CND, Mouvement de la Paix, all the organizations that are trying to develop these contexts. Also, some of our US colleagues, 1 hour, 2 hours before we met, we had a preparatory conference for the NPT conference, and also one of our Russian colleagues were taking part of this conference. So it is possible. It is definitely not enough what we are doing, but we are trying some steps, and some possibilities are still exist, and we definitely should use them.
That's extremely interesting. It explains one contact I have. I was in touch with a Russian who studies wildlife in, I think, elks or something in the forests of Russia. So it's pretty remote from anything that would be nuclear or politically very sensitive. But I invited him to join me on one of my talk shows to discuss, elks in Russia or something. And he said, well, he was very suspicious. I mean, why are you doing this? And don't you know that there's a ban against scientific contact? And I'm a scientist, so I wrote him back and I said, well, we don't pay attention to little things like a war. We talk to each other anyway. So so he'll be with me on this. But I didn't even know there was such a thing as a ban. I mean, I said, that's ridiculous. There's no ban. But apparently you're saying that certain scientific organizations have stopped it. And
in Germany, all the big Max Planck Institute, Fraunhofer Institute, Leibniz community, all they have stepped. They with the official exchange of students, they stopped every contact. And the same level is on the European level. ESA and all these organizations stopped their contacts to Russia. And this is, for me, absolutely the wrong way. Absolutely the wrong way. Yeah, and we are trying our best. I try to keep, we have some institutional contacts to Russia, above all to the European Institute of the Academy of Sciences. We are still in discussion with them. We don't agree about all the points, but we are discussing and we are in contact with them. And they are very happy about this, and we too. And so it is possible.
Does IPB have any member organizations in Russia, or have you ever had any?
We have some smaller member organizations in Russia. We have some coming from the environmental point of view, above all in St. Petersburg and around the Baltic Sea. We have these Women Against the War in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. And we have some contacts to individuals, which traditionally were working for peace, which were partly visiting our conferences. And we have the institutional contacts to the Academy of Sciences and to the Lomonosov University.
Okay, that's wonderful. Let's cooperate. I don't know whether there's any way in which we can help each other, Rainer, but I have these talk shows 3 days a week, and I can always do them more, where I invite people from all parts of the world. And it'd be interesting if we create an hour-long conversation, once a week or so with people in Russia and with IPB members and so on. And then it would not only be publicized here, but we could have you use it however you want to, because you might find it helpful.
I would suggest the first step could be, we have a council member of IPB, which is Russian. This is Oleg Bodrov from St. Petersburg. And he is definitely willing to have a discussion with you. So that we definitely can arrange.
I'll contact you by email so you can put us in touch.
No problem. I am available.
Good. I think that maybe just making conversations public enough so that people could see that there are conversations and they are possible. That may be useful. I'm not
That is the reason I'm talking to you about this. I want to spread the information. Contacts are possible, discussions and conversations are possible. Please let's use these instruments. We need these peoples-to-peoples diplomacy as one small but important step to overcome this horrible situation of confrontation and war.
Mm-hmm. You know, my friend Andrei Kamenshkov is a Russian-American dual citizenship living in Kyiv, and is much more, has been about 10 years there, 8 or 10 years, and so much more oriented toward the Ukrainian point of view. But what he does now, and I don't even know how to do this, but he belongs to something that he said is originally was set up for people who wanted to make contacts with people in other countries. Mm-hmm. And so he joins, and it will pick a random person, somebody in Russia, and it could be anywhere in Russia, and phone them up who's joined this too. Yeah. So then they will have a conversation between two strangers who and of course they talk about the war, which I think, maybe we should figure out how that works and try to get other people to do it.
As I can only say, who wants to see a little bit of conversation between Russia and Ukraine, there are two discussions on the IPB website, which we had with Russian and Ukrainian peace activists. Mm-hmm. And I can only say this was very nice, very polite, very supportive talks. And for the peace, they were absolutely on the same line.
Mm-hmm. My mission is always to get people involved in a discussion where they're hoping to learn something, not just to treat listening as the pause between speaking, which is one of the jokes that's frequently, listening is just waiting to speak. It's how we get that learning process to actually permeate minds and change behavior. It's in some places it's harder. I mean, certainly it's easier in Canada at the moment than it is in the United States, where almost every important issue is something you're not allowed to talk about, but you're allowed to have an opinion about it. And so
what do you mean? I'm not sure what you're saying there.
Well, there's a lot of opinion being circulated and people joining this opinion and that opinion, but you don't get a dialogue. You don't say whether it's the rights of women, abortion, voting, guns, the environment. It's almost impossible to get a dialogue. What you get is the various sides stating their opinions, and sometimes those with more money have better luck at it.
Well, there's group dynamics, there's a thing of people feeling that they have to be loyal to their tribe and say the things that are acceptable in their tribe. And they don't want to, take any qualified point of view. And that, unfortunately, is, I think, maybe the worst danger we have, because if people have sense of obligation to conform to the views of anybody, you don't really have much hope.
You don't have dialogue. You don't have learning. You don't have the insights that produce the way forward. All you have is people lining up on both sides of the barricade.
Right. Well, okay, let's break down the barricades. That's fun. I enjoy it so much. So I've had fun with you, and let's have some more fun with some people in Russia. Okay, I'll be back in touch. Thank you both. Okay. It's been fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
enjoy
thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Project Save the World produces one of these shows 3 days a week, and sometimes more. This is episode number 474. You can watch them or listen to them as audio podcasts on our website, tosavetheworld.ca. Eventually, we even post transcripts there. And when you get there, look around. We have conversations going on there all the time about 6 global issues, plus potential reforms in governance, economics, and civil society. To find a particular talk show, enter its title or episode number in the search bar, or maybe the name of one of the guest speakers. After you've watched or listened, scroll down and share your thoughts about the show. This is a place for dialogue. Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine. You can buy a single copy or subscribe for $20 Canadian per year through Press Reader. Just go to pressreader.com on your browser, and in the search bar, enter the word peace. You will see the cover of the current issue and buttons to click to subscribe. Here's the link that Reiner was talking about. It's a transcript of the conversation they held at the IBB with 2 Russian activists. And you can get the link right here.